third down, you fucking loser! You gotta get out there and you gotta kick some ass! I don't want to see a child alive by the end of this match! Get out there and play your fucking ass off! Go, 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 go! I love being a role model for young men! Woo! In this day and age, there are a number of very serious, very important debates going on. And no debate is more serious, more important, more critical, or more complex than the debate over whether or not esports are actually sports. But for all the dumb bullshit reasons those people have, they are right. Esports are not actually sports. They are missing the one thing that all sports really need. Fantasy sports. Fantasy sports. Fantasy. Do you get it? Look, not everybody can be a top athlete. And not everybody can be a top gamer either. We didn't used to think about this because the top gamer we knew was Jerry Timmons, who lived at the end of the block, who had both consoles, you know? And the only reason he was the top gamer was because he was homeschooled, which isn't even a real thing. It was just his mom hiring some burnout 22-year-old so she could find some place to suck off her meathead boyfriend. And Jerry got to sit in his room and play the Contender 2 for hours during the day when we were all at school, so he got to be better than us because he had 24/7 practice, and I should have been practicing. It should have been me. I should have been the Contender fucking hero. I was the top gamer. I was the better Bruno Smith main. It's bullshit, Jerry. Fuck you, Jerry. Fuck you, Jerry. Fuck you, Jerry. So instead, we seek success in talent by proxy. I know at 24 that I will never be Drew Brees. But if I draft Drew Brees to my fantasy team, then when he is successful, I will be as successful as Drew Brees. By proxy. Now, the beauty of fantasy leagues is that they turn spectating, a role that is usually reserved for people who aren't good enough to compete, and they turn it into a competition in itself. You make a goofy team with a goofy name, you draft a bunch of real multi-million-dollar athletes onto your team, you decide who sits and who starts every week, and then you face off your goofy team against your buddy's goofy team for a pot of $60, and then you get to watch all the multi-million-dollar athletes on Sunday, and you go, hey, I'm just as good as you. Then, as your mistakes as a manager continue to pile up, you get to watch your dreams get slowly ripped away from you by some piece of shit who auto-drafted because he couldn't get out of his in-laws' house because it was chili night. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is where esports fails, okay? Despite the fact that I play way more video games than I do sports, like fucking clearly, I didn't know the name of a single esports competitor before today. Okay, but in fantasy football, I know the names of tons of players, despite football being a sport that I didn't watch until like a year ago, okay? So, like, you gotta sell me. Sell me these characters. How do you sell me these people? How do you sell me these athletes? The answer is to let me play fantasy esports. So, how do we build an esports fantasy league? Well, first you have to start with a video game. In my opinion, we should start with a video game whose league is the most analogous to a traditional sports league. Overwatch. Now look, I know you're writing the comment right now. I know. Overwatch fantasy leagues already exist. HighNoon.gg is the biggest and it's got a great setup. There's private leagues, there's an unlimited version, they've got Pick'em. It's a great, robust system. But I take one issue, and that's in the way that they score their fantasy. So I actually have HighNoon.gg's scoring algorithm with me and I want to explain it. So, here's their statistics. The first scoring statistic is damage divided by 1,000. For every 1,000 points of damage dealt, your player gets 1 point on their fantasy league. Then there's points healed. So for every 1,000 points of damage healed, the player gets 1 point. So if you heal 5,000 points of damage, or you deal 5,000 points of damage, that would be 5 to damage dealt or 5 to damage healed. Then they have eliminations divided by 2. In Overwatch, elimination is just a kill. So if you get 10 kills, you get 5 points. That would be what we refer to as points per elimination. For those of you who play fantasy football, it's essentially the equivalent of PPR. Here we have a half PPE, 1/2 points per elimination. I guess you could theoretically set it to a whole PPE, but I don't really know. And also, this isn't coronavirus. We don't need to talk about too much PPE stuff, okay. So the issue I have with this is that it doesn't really give any differentiation between classes on a statistical level for fantasy. Imagine if in fantasy football we gave the kicker a point for a touchdown. It doesn't really make any sense because that's not what the kicker is there for. So instead, we give them points for field goals and extra points because that is what the kicker is there to do. We don't give the wide receiver points for rushing. That's not what they're for. We give them points for reception because that's what they're supposed to do. So I've designed a different algorithm, which you can see below. First things first, we're going to go back to points per elimination. I'm going to keep it at 1/2 point per elimination, just so it basically sizes up the same. Again, I'm sure in leagues that you can change that. You can make it 1 point per elimination, 1/4 point per elimination, no points. I'm sure you can customize that however you want. I don't really care. Then there are points over 1,000. Unlike highnoon.gg, I don't just hand out damage and healing. I'm actually going to make you pick given what the class type is. So for damage dealing characters, you have damage over 1,000. For support, you have healing over 1,000. And for tank, you have soak over 1,000. Soak being the combination of your damage blocked and your damage taken, because that is actually what the point of a tank is just to block damage to weaker characters. Then I'm going to give you assistance divided by 4. So since your kill is worth 1/2 a point, any assist, or if you're a support character, a defensive assist, is going to be worth 1/4 of a point. So as an example, I actually have Nico GDH as May for match 1 of the final face-off between the Paris Eternal and the Toronto Defiant this year in Overwatch League. So according to the High Noon algorithm, he had 6,796 points of damage, which divided by 1,000 would be 6.796 points. Then he had 322 points of healing, which would be 0.32 for his fantasy points. And then he had 19 divided by 2 eliminations, which comes out to 16.62 fantasy points in that one match for Nico GDH. Using the Geek Space algorithm, we're going to actually change it. So we start with 19.2, same for eliminations, because he is actually a damaged character, so it makes sense for counting eliminations. We count eliminations for every character just because it's the way you win a game about combat. Then we have 6 assists divided by 4, so each assist is worth 1/4 of a point, while each elimination is worth 1/2 a point. Then we have 6,796 points of damage divided by 1,000, which comes out to 1780, so pretty close, right? That makes sense. In one match, you actually have between the two systems, a pretty similar score. Healing is slightly less attributable to a damaged character, so I gave them assists instead because that kind of works all the way across all the classes. But where the difference really comes in is in tanks, because tanks don't heal, but they also don't get a ton of damage. So what do? They soak. So this is the stat sheet difference for No Smite playing as Orisa in the same match. Okay, as you can see, I've listed her blue because she is a tank and is soaking up damage. So, for the High Noon algorithm, she only dealt 4,924 points of damage alongside 0 points of healing and 22 eliminations, so she gets a score of 15.92. Orisa, I don't know what actual gender No Smite is, I haven't looked it up. In the Geek Space algorithm, start with the same thing, 22 eliminations divided by 2, and then we're actually going to combine the amount of damage taken plus the amount of damage blocked. Due to the fact that they are a tank, their entire point is basically to take damage like a sponge to hide the softer characters. So that's 5,554 points of damage taken and 11,018 points of damage blocked. We're going to add those together, divide it by 1,000, and then we're going to take the assists, 18 assists divided by 4, and that would give us 3,207. Which is actually more representative of what the character is doing, because to judge a character that is a tank by its killing or its healing makes no sense really, because it's not their goal. Now, as the commissioner of your own Overwatch Fantasy League, you could change my statistical algorithm as much as you want it, right? You can change the PPE, the points per elimination. You can change the final blow bonus. You could have a final blow bonus of 1. For every final blow, the character gets an extra point. Or you could have a team win bonus. If you feel like, we're not valuing support or tank enough, you could have a team win bonus. They get a bonus if their team wins. So it's up to you. I mean, that's the beauty of the algorithm, is that it's specialized but also flexible. Now I know what you're saying to yourself. Mr. Angry Video Game Man who's yelling to me about video game sports on this video website, I don't believe you. I want you to show me how this is going to look for real. Let me take you to my board. This is an example match I've set up for my Fantasy Overwatch League. This is my team, the Philadelphia Racial Slurs, which in the context of fantasy gaming is both a funny joke and an actual player statistic that can affect the score, but we'll get to that later. I have 3 rostered teammates. I have Fitz, who is a damage player, I have Aim God, who is a support character, and I have No Smite, who is a tank. Usually you would have 6, 2 of each type, but I'm skipping it right now because I hate doing the fucking math for this goddamn chart. So, Aim God gets 101 eliminations in week 13. Each one times a half a point. My opponent did have a great tank, outscoring my tank 224. He also gets points against Raucus, who is a support 70,000 points. He has 42 divided by 1,000. Each one 7 half points, 21 matchup, which is Aim God. He also has 50 overall. Overall, I come out with the bigger score at 462.08 points to 338.36 points. That makes me, the Philadelphia Racial Slurs, the winner. And this leads me to my last point, which is important for fantasy esports. Success by proxy, by talent by proxy. That's the key to fantasy esports. It's not even about video games or playing video games. It's about seeing somebody who is good do something that you aren't good at so that you can say you were good by watching them be good at the thing that they're good at. Okay, it's all about projection. If somebody else is good at something, I am good at something by knowing that they are good at something. And look, if we can't all live in our fantasies, then why even have video games?
So she's saying a lot of stuff. There's just so much.
I led up to this earlier in the episode. That's what you fucking thought I was doing nothing. I literally.
No, I knew you were doing that. That's what was making me madder. It was knowing you were actually having to do this like that for a joke.
It really comes down to the end. When we get to the end, you're gonna think the whole joke wasn't worth it.